started. It's the March 7th meeting of the Beach Management Advisory Committee. We do have a quorum. The first item, anybody have any comments on our agenda? Okay, on to last meeting's minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, how about a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Matt, do you want to give us an update?
Sure. No major update, no change from last meeting. We're still coordinating with the Corps of Engineers to see how we can shift the project over to an inactive status to keep the work that we've done so far, but yet, not proceed any further. Just that, put it on the shelf as the BCC directed, but easy enough for the county to do, but not so easy on the Corps of Engineers side. So working through that, those kinks on getting it shelved and getting it deemed inactive. Still working on that, and then also our public workshop. Brian, do we have any idea? I think we're shooting for mid-April, something around there.
We'll go back to you and BCC next week and see, give them an update and ask if they want to make a decision on that.
Okay. Aside from that, that's it.
All right, thanks, Matt. Any new business? I don't think we have any new business.
Can we just bring up new business?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that the Customary Use Committee completed their recommendations, and if the Board of County Commissioners adopts everything that we recommended, which got recommended, by the way, a 9-1 to 0, because the judge never wanted to vote unless it was a tie, which that's good. But we hope they'll take our recommendations, and that it might make for a little more peace on the beach. Like everything else, it is going to be largely dependent on education and enforcement. I know you all love hearing that word, or enforcement, over and over again, but it really is. It's going to be a big, if they adopt the things, it's going to be a change for recent history. It's not a change for ancient history, but it'll mean that there's some things that people cannot do if they're on private property that, that some of them have felt like they had rights to do for the last 5 years or so, let's call it. So anyway, I don't think there's a whole lot we can say right now, because we don't know if they're going to adopt it or not until they have a meeting on the 14th. So anybody that has opinions on the subject, you might want to come to the BCC meeting on the 14th and have your 3 minutes. But that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, on the 14th.
They're going to just make a decision to have a public hearing to adopt those recommendations, or they will at that meeting?
I know they have to have another workshop, one, instead of the usual 2.
Okay.
I know it's being presented on the 14th, and
okay.
Certainly that gives an opportunity to comment. My guess is they may say, we agree with these, but we want public comment, but I don't know that it'll be finalized until after the workshop.
Okay.
And then, but the plan, as I understand it, is still to implement on April 1st, which doesn't give a load of time for people to know that it's been implemented, and then do the said education and enforcement. And one of the biggest issues I think that we need to try to make sure on enforcement is, we all have our own opinions. Everybody on the planet has opinions about things, but we need to be careful that, when people have the job of enforcing, that they don't undermine the rules because of their own personal opinions. And, I've seen and heard a little bit of that myself, whether it be from, the sheriff's office occasionally or code enforcement occasionally. So it's just something we need to try to make sure the TDC will be charged with this, apparently, if the recommendations are taken. And I'm sure the sheriff will have some component, perhaps, that they could assist with, particularly if people were not responsive to TDC requests.
Right.
But I think code enforcement, based on the recommendations we made will be the ones that have the biggest onus on enforcement.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and that's correct. Do you know who will be presenting this information? Will it be a member of the BCC staff, or will it be a member of the committee?
Well, Sydney Noyes is the one that's redrafting. Now, whether she's going to present it or whether Judge McGee, because I suspect Judge McGee will be, since he was the chair, I think he will be the one actually officially presenting it.
Okay.
But Sydney will, prior to that, have already distributed all the recommendations that were made by the committee.
Right. Okay. Good. So March 14th.
That's an important meeting for it. And then whatever date they set the workshop for.
Right. And that'll be at 4 p.m. in this building.
I'm not sure of the time yet. We can,
Yeah.
that fortunately is readily available on the website. Yeah,
10-4. Appreciate it.
thanks.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to old business. The county's adopted ordinance 2017-05. We've got copies of it.
I can go
We
right.
want to do a little,
Sure, I can go down through it pretty quickly and let you know what was done based on the, so in your package that has the minutes, you also have the document called TDC Beach Management Committee meeting minutes, January 10th. And it's got the section of the recommendations that we put forth back in late 2016. And then the items in red are the ones that made it through the TDC Advisory, Tourist Development Council Advisory Board. So if we look at number one, section 2260, that's policy, that's implement a public beach vendor management program. That was not accepted. However, we were given instructions to spend the first part of this year in defining and refining what that agreement would look like. When I say agreement, the agreement being the vehicle between the county and a possible beach or a managed beach vendor. And then also what beaches it would be on and what would be the actual terms and conditions of activity on those particular beaches. So we're working on that right now. We'll get that back before the BCC probably first of summer, maybe midsummer, and we'll see how it moves through next year. Item number two, storage of vendor equipment at the toe of the dune. They decided to leave it as it is. There was much discussion about community storage boxes at public beach accesses, but nothing was determined on that. So the final result was the code remains as it exists. That means vendors have the right to store equipment at the toe of the dune provided it is rented the next day. Item number three, beach equipment setup standards. It was adopted that there be a 15-foot clear zone at the water's edge, as well as a 15-foot clear zone at the toe of the dune or foot of a beach dune walkover structure.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Does this apply to the vendors
It applies to the vendors and to the general public
on,
on both counts of 15 feet.
now, what's the setup? In other words, are you saying that somebody can't go sit with their toes in the water?
Beach equipment.
Beach equipment.
Beach equipment, right. So, now the obvious question is, Brian, how do you plan on enforcing that? Well, currently the code reads a reasonable distance from the water's edge. Ambiguous statement when you encounter people on the beach. So we asked for a definitive distance from the water's edge. Brian, how are you going to measure that? We're going to use our discretion when we're down on the beach. If there's somebody that has equipment set up, right at the water's edge, we're going to politely ask them to move it back and explain the code to them. We'll spend this year educating people. Once I say discretion comes in as if people decide that they just want to be obstinate about it and not, do the, what I call the right thing to do, and that is, politely move their chair back a little bit. What we were trying to do on this code was overcome the water's edge. Everybody's got to sit at the water's edge. All right, in Walton County, they don't like sitting second and third tier on the beach. So what happened is vendors that deliver their equipment to the beach but don't attend that equipment will come down and would set their chairs up in close enough proximity to the water's edge that people could not come in and set up in between that chair and the water's edge. And so, the general practice is that it's going to be as close as it can get to the water. Otherwise, somebody will come in and sit down in front of it. People typically won't come down and sit in front of a chair that has somebody in it. Okay? So we'd actually asked for 10 feet, but it was decided that 15 feet was a better deal. So that's kind of the history behind that, and how we hope to, or how we are going to enforce it, and the behavior action that we hope comes from it is that people come down, set up their chairs, understand that, if there is some space in between it, that I really shouldn't go down and set my equipment up in front of other chairs, be they empty or not empty. Now, if family wants to come down and spread their towel down there, they're not going to get any grief from beach code enforcement because it's not beach equipment. Okay.
This is the general public and vendors, correct?
General public and visitors, right. The 15 foot from the toe of the dune is simply a corridor for emergency vehicles and maintenance vehicles to be able to traverse the beach. Even though there is some, alternate ideas on if that's good or not. During the, when we're able to, we typically like to drive our trucks down at the rack line. The reason is because it doesn't affect shorebirds, other wildlife in the dunes, doesn't degrade the dunes, and our tracks get erased by the wind and water. Unfortunately, during the summer season, really, starting spring break, because of the amount of equipment that gets put on the beach by both vendors and by general public, sometimes we're unable to do that. In this past couple of years, there's been times when we simply can't get any kind of vehicle down the beach at any location on the beach because the beach equipment is set from water's edge to toe of dune. And so we have to be able to, code enforcement sheriff definitely has to be able to traverse it. Our beach maintenance guys are on the beach early, and generally we don't have that many issues with it, but this would allow us a mechanism for code enforcement and sheriff to ask people to move their chairs so that this corridor remains empty. Okay.
You got a question behind you? No?
Yes.
Do I need to come up? Or
Yeah, sure. If you want to come up there.
May I address that?
Sure, yeah.
I just got to say that came to mind,
Mhm.
because at times there was less than 30 feet of beach in front of the,
Mm-hmm.
from the toe of the dunes to the water's edge. Does that mean, and I misunderstood what you said, whether this 15 feet from the water's edge applies to private property owners as well as
Mhm.
the public?
It does.
So if I have a 30-foot beach in front of my house, I can't use it or can't put anything on it? If it's, is that correct?
So is my understanding that if it's private property, you can be within 15 feet of the water's edge, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
That was my
But
first
you-
question.
but
This
even on private
concerns
property-
public, this concerns public beach.
Okay.
But even on private property, you have to be 15 feet from the toe of the
the
dune.
dune.
Understand
But that point
That's-
that you bring up, I was at the beach yesterday measuring off a beach in the Seacrest area. And the water was up yesterday within 21 feet of the toe of the dune. And I trust the discretion of code enforcement, and I don't think this is going to be an issue. But with that technically being said, per the rule, there should be not a single beach chair within, or is that, I guess there'd be a very, very small sliver.
Yeah, if it's private property, if it's a specific place permit you hold on a beach that they own to the mean high water line, then you would leave them 15 feet from the toe of the dune.
God,
Or-
no, but the whole point is, so yesterday the water's obviously rough and the tide's really high. In that situation, 21 feet was where the water was rushing up to in the toe of the dune. No vendor, if this was a public beach, could technically set up, period, if that rule was really enforced.
Yeah, and it will be enforced, so that's a very correct statement.
Thank you. My name's
And at the same time, though, if that was for a vendor on a public beach, if that gentleman wanted to bring his own beach chair on a public beach and sit in his own beach chair, legally he can't do that either.
That's correct. Got to leave 15 feet from the water's edge and the toe of the dune.
And that will, you think that your enforcement staff will enforce that?
Yeah, we will. Like I said, we're going to spend the first year here, educating people to try to get a behavior change. We're not going to be out there, day one, writing tickets for this. Like I say,
Yeah, I can just imagine some pretty bad pushback. I'm not even speaking on behalf of a vendor. I'm just saying that I can't imagine if Mr. Jeff went up to a couple or a family that was sitting in their own beach chairs and said, legally you can't be on this beach because you're within 30 feet and the water's a little high today. Leave or I'm going to give you a ticket,
Yeah. I don't want to, speculate or offer conjecture on what may happen. But, unfortunately, our beaches are critically eroded. If we could have had a beach restoration project, we probably wouldn't be even having this issue. But that was decided last year. So, but anyway, you're correct.
Our beaches are going to continue to erode.
Our beaches are critically eroded.
Yeah, they have been since Opal, pretty much.
Pardon me?
They have been since Hurricane Opal.
Yeah, they have.
Never really recovered.
You're right.
20 years.
Yeah.
So they're going to continue to get worse.
It's interesting. I read an article in the paper this morning that the state is seeking to increase the amount of money made available for restoration projects from $30 million to $50 million. It seems like that's the MO now is we're going to start restoring all the beaches in Florida. So, of course, $50 million doesn't go a whole lot way.
Well, we had the lion's share of it last year.
Yeah,
As long as we don't have a consensus on it, we're not going to get any of it.
it's pretty good. The beach program was started back in the early 80s, and then the initial funding amount was somewhere south of 30 million, and it's stayed that amount over the last 3 decades. It's pretty, and we all know how much more expensive things are now than they were in the 80s, and especially how expensive offshore dredging equipment and beach restoration can be. So this is a great move, and I think what it signals is Governor Scott, as well as a lot of the other representatives, especially from South Florida with critically eroded beaches, they're all recognizing the importance of having those beaches in the wide areas. And something we need to keep in mind is, and I know a lot of private property owners do this, and it's a good move to restore the dunes, building truck haul sand and building back your dunes, but that doesn't do much to raise the elevation of the beach berm and widen the beach berm. And that, just imagine if the dune were stepped out and the water line stayed static, you're now decreasing that usable area even further. You're giving protection to the upland property, and that's a good thing, but we just have to be aware of, it's always a double-edged sword, seems like what we're dealing with, so no good solutions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Well, and one of the biggest issues, Matt, is how they're going to find compatible sand, because ours is all quartz sand. And, they can say anything they want, but you can tell the ones that have been renourished, and some of those have been raked and raked and raked and raked and raked. And I used to see pictures on Facebook that I thought to myself, that does not look like our sand, but it'd be down in the Miramar Beach area and all. And I'm not saying the Miramar Beach sand is not pretty, because it's still, you go anywhere else in the United States just about, and I assure you, even our broad end sand is prettier than most people's sand, but it always had a beige cast to it. And yet when I would take pictures of the sand in front of my house that never had renourishment, it looked white on Facebook. And so I think there's things the camera picks up, that even people's naked eye doesn't pick up unless they have it side by side. But the biggest deal is that you'll never get rid of all the little pieces and things. I don't have shells anywhere. I could go out and walk around the area I live in, and the only time you'd ever find pieces of shells is right on the rack line area. You just don't ever step on one, and yet when I went down to Jetty East, which was consistently used as the example, you couldn't step anywhere you weren't stepping on little pieces of shell and stuff. So the sand is a big deal to people too. I know there's a lot of belief that beachfront owners just don't want to share, and they don't want another 100 feet or whatever out in front of them, but it's also about the sand.
Oh, I completely get it, and that is our biggest challenge is finding that sand. And I'll be honest, when we go and dredge and we're pulling offshore materials, that was at one time beach sand, but we're talking geologic timescales ago.
Yeah.
It's
Or
been
maybe just a couple hurricanes.
Yeah.
well, and we can't go and dredge the second sandbar, for example, and use that. We're just causing erosion when we do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go where we can find a lot of material. But the stuff that's brought in, I don't want to use any names, but all the upland mines, it's great sand. It's beautiful sand. It is the same geologic deposits that we have on the beach. But if you go out there and see those pits where they dig it up, it's not pretty. Mm-hmm. They wash it and wash it and wash it and sift it and get everything out that you possibly can imagine. And it's an extremely expensive process. Mm-hmm. And we're working on some mitigation and QA/QC plans of how we can do this. And you look at South Florida, they're running out of sand. They're looking at going and dredging in Bahama to go and pull material for Miami Beach. It's a challenge.
Well, the
And
Bahamas will not appreciate that after a
They
point.
don't. They don't.
when
You
their-
can only imagine.
Their island sinks,
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I know we have a lot of material on our beach, a lot of hard pan and a lot of clay. And whenever we have storms, a lot of that's uncovered and eroded. We get a lot of.
Where's
hard-
yours? Where?
I know there's a lot. Seagrove.
Oh, really?
Rosemary Beach. Yeah, you get a hurricane there and the roots get uncovered. I'm sure people have seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Seaside, Blue Mountain.
It's a bad
it's
hard
everywhere.
pan. Just,
Huh.
and clay. I remember when we were doing the Seagrove Beach access, we were getting complaints down there from clay. I did a couple of augers and it's just, discolored sand. It's just orange clay beneath it, So if it erodes the bluff a little bit and gets into one of those seams, you're gonna get clay out there on the beach. If it uncovers the beach to the hard pan, you're gonna get the roots and the black.
Yeah. Well, you probably have
But it
more.
gets,
Yeah.
the sand accumulates, it washes out, it turns
Yeah.
white,
Yeah.
after a while.
Because our area, even after hurricanes Opal, which I was, I already was exposed to Opal. I wasn't living here full time, but I came down here and had to shovel sand out of my house, literally off the floors. But Opal, Ivan, Dennis, all of those basically, just stripped the dry sand off the beach. But we didn't have that. We did have some peat moss, but I guess maybe our area didn't have much of the orange clay and that stuff
There's a lot of.
down
hard
below.
pan,
Yeah,
below the sand.
yeah. We didn't really see that in our area, but it's also extremely elevated, kind of like Seagrove and all too. I don't know, but in any case, the sand's a big deal. So,
10-4.
pardon.
I said 10-4.
Yeah.
Moving on, we're on 3B3, which is the area that we were trying to put in some access aisles. County did not accept it as it's written. What they adopted was to provide for a access aisle down the middle of the vendor zone on public beaches. So as you know, we have vendor zones on our public beaches. So in each one of those vendor zones, there's to be a 6-foot wide access aisle that would allow people that are second, third, fourth.
That shows a 6-inch wide aisle.
Appreciate the clarification. That should be 6 foot. So in the ordinance, I'll go back and make sure, but we need to make, I will verify and
Yeah.
we'll have a
That's
correction if it
right.
doesn't say 6 foot in the ordinance. All right. So anyway, that was accepted. Item C is the size of tents. No tents larger than 6 by 6 by 6.
Let's discuss that in there.
Pardon me?
Tents.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
In the In the ordinance itself, it's on page 11, it says it'll be unlawful, it shall be unlawful for any person to use, erect, or possess a tent greater than 6 by 6 by 6. But in this, in your minutes, it says add verbiage to prohibit vending of tents. So I'm confused. Are we talking about us as the public, or is this related only to vendors?
This is vendors on public beach. So,
Vendors.
yeah, vendors on public beach, and there's also an accompanying one later on in this that affects the general public on public beaches. Okay, so that would be, this is under, if you look at the large outline number 3, it's section 2260, and that is the section that deals with vendors. And then if you look at item number 9, section 2254G, that is general regulation of use and conduct on the beach and waterways for general public. But in both cases, the 6 by 6 by 6 tent is only restricted to public beaches. If you have private property beach, you're not constrained by that. Now, customary use, what was the recommendation of customary use?
Customary use recommends no tents.
No tents.
No tents.
Okay.
With the exception of the owner.
Well, the owner, but you know, the owners have rights to do certain things that, you know,
Right.
that the general public would
So
not.
are they going to restrict that? I mean, because a 6 by 6 holds nothing.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, can we bring out 2 6 by 6 tents then?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that the verbiage that was put in there was, you know, the basic premise during last year was the tents have gotten out of hand. And so if you go to a retailer, the smallest tent you can buy is a pop-up tent, is an 8 by 8 by 8. And so while the general idea was to restrict tents, there was also an understanding that they didn't want to prohibit a young family from being able to offer shade for infants and toddlers. And so by doing a 6 by 6 by 6, you effectively prohibit the pop-up style tent, but not the kind that has the flexible fiberglass bows. Now, will retailers immediately respond with a 6 by 6 by 6 pop-up tent? Who knows?
Okay, now these are tents and not canopy,
Right.
so you still have a 12 by 12 canopy.
No.
No, sir. That's kind of using semantics.
Yeah.
Semantics. It's 6 by 6 by 6 was put in there intentionally so that it was a cube or volume area. So, you know, could you argue the point of tent versus canopy? You probably could.
Yeah.
More than likely, the circuit court judge would decide that, not our beach code enforcement officers on the beach. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, no,
I'm just saying.
No, you brought up a good point.
Yeah.
Because as we get into the steel-bladed shovels, I'll share with you some social media on that was sort of frustrating, but you know, it's every day that we have people that would fight, you know,
Well, yeah.
discuss the verbiage. And it's hard, you know, when you're writing code or suggesting code terms and conditions to, you know, I mean, it shouldn't be hard, but, you know, it is. Even though we have numerous meetings with public input, a lot of times that type of discussion doesn't come up until after the code's adopted, and then you say, oh, yeah, we should have said, you know, textile fabric covered poles, you know?
So what should we call them, Brian? Shade structures? I mean, we've got, this is, this,
Ordinance already.
this
I think the
is,
tent-
well, I know,
I
but
think
if
the
you're
definition of
saying,
tents- I
if
think
you're
the
saying, because somebody argues a different name, it's
Covered
not,
all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the definition of tents, if you went and looked at it, that there would be a broad enough definition that it would cover most of the structures we're going to encounter on the beach.
oh, okay, well, that, hopefully, because it's gonna just create more of the same if semantics, because next thing, somebody will say, be saying, this isn't a tent, it's an igloo, it's a, you know,
Lean-to.
whatever, and
No,
that.
this is a geodetic dome.
Right, right.
But what was the problem with the people that don't like tents on the beach?
There's a few things that weren't wrong with tents. One is they were used as proxy, so they take up a lot of space, and people would typically come down, set them up, and don't use them. I mean, they might set them up in the morning and not come back the rest of the day. The other thing is that they block view, and because of this trend of nobody wanting to sit second, third tier, but now we're forced to, but we have a wall of tents and chairs that people can't get around and can't see through. So it became a safety issue of their children in the water. And the other thing is they're typically not anchored properly, and when the wind picks up, they become airborne and they're extremely dangerous. Whereas umbrellas, vendors do a very good job of drilling them in, and they tend to stay in place even when the wind blows. Occasionally they'll get airborne, but it's seldom that they do.
Is an umbrella a tent? So if an umbrella had a diameter of more than 6 feet, then it's not legal right
That'd be correct.
Once again, I think a tent would be defined as something that has more than one pole structure.
Talk about semantics.
I can see now I'm going to have to add some definitions or ask the BCC to have to add definitions to the.
Well, and you may also add in there how many per family, because I know that's what's gonna happen. People will just bring multiple 6x6s.
Right. What I'm saying is, I think the intent was to prohibit the pop-up style tent. And so if they want to link together, numerous of these little small ones, once again, they're 6 foot tall. The average person, standing up can see somewhat over them, as opposed to the 8x8 ones that came back in. Or a lot of what we saw last year was here it is on page 424. Tent means a portable shelter of skins, canvas, plastic, or the like, supported by one or more poles or a frame, and often secured by ropes fastened to pegs in the ground. The term tent includes, but is not limited to, camping tents, beach tents, and sun shelters. The term tent does not include baby shade tents. That's in definitions. So we did offer a fairly decent, even though one or more poles.
Where is that?
This is on 424 under definitions.
So all of us who have purchased those really nice umbrellas that are, what are they, 8 feet across, are they 7.5? Yeah.
That'd be a single pole
We're
tent.
not
We're
gonna
not-
be
we're
able
not-
to use them?
No, ma'am, we're going to sit out an umbrella, not a tent.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
you
So
know,
just want a clarification.
yeah.
Do you have a limitation on umbrellas at 6.5?
I believe we had a limitation on umbrellas. So no, that umbrellas didn't come up. What's your standard size umbrella, Philip?
Depends if you talk about the actual curvature, just straight across.
Diameter.
If it's straight across diameter, it's around 6 foot. But then if you're to do it this way, it's probably around a little over 7.
No, we would consider straight line across the bottom.
It's about 6.
Yeah, I've looked up relative to the customary use ordinance and use umbrellas, but standard commercial size, at least the way they sell them, is 7.5 feet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
diameter.
Do these same definitions apply across the customary use ordinance as well then, would you?
There was some conflict between this and customary use.
I'm just talking about definitions, not that, because there's definitely some conflict between what would be allowed on public and if the customary use recommendations are adopted. But from a definition standpoint, if
I'll be honest with you, I have not seen the recommendations that were approved by the committee yet.
Okay.
We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the county legal department to go over all that. I
Legal?
should get a
Okay.
copy today. I thought I'd get one
Yeah.
yesterday. but I
Well,
didn't.
Sydney and Larry were at every single meeting,
Yeah.
so is Larry going to be there too?
I would assume that somebody from county admin will be at the
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, if Sydney's there, she heard every discussion, so
Yeah.
she knows.
Like I said, going through this, there was some discussion about there is some conflict with the suggestions associated with customary use. We knew that going in, but recognizing the lawsuits that have been filed and the customary use may be postponed at that time, we decided to move forward with these definitions, with the understanding that customary use could change these.
Sure,
So
sure.
we'll figure that out. I'm sure if there is, it'll be immediate notification to all concerned parties.
Is
All
there,
right, can we move?
provision for a neighborhood or someone to have like a private party on the beach and put up a kind of tent they want?
Yes, special event permit application allows you to do things that aren't normally allowed by code.
And is it expensive to get a permit?
Well, that's in section resolution 2017-06. There were some changes, and there's some graduated scales based on number of attendees. We'll get to that in just a minute there.
Okay.
Okay, so item 3C, that was the tent size. We just got through that. Number 4, 2260, paragraph D8 is the upland authorization. It was discussed that it would remain as the same. In other words, no change to it. Item number 5, penalties, fees, and fines. If you'll see ordinance number 2017-06, that establishes the change in cost for beach vending permit fees, as well as special event fees, which is item 6. Okay, also in item 6, if you look at, there are a few things changed to that as to how we review and process special permit applications and what special events we allow at different beaches. So we are currently compiling a comprehensive list of all the public beach accesses as to physical size and establishing a number of people that public beach access can effectively hold for a special event. And the special event permitting, processing, and review is going to move into my office probably in May or June. And the reason it's not done right now is I'm renovating my office to handle, I got to have more office space for the people we've hired to do that. However, we are working with the planning department, who is the processor currently, and starting to implement some of this review processes. So, moving
Right down the
forward.
hall.
Yes, sir, they do it in planning department. A fellow named Derek, what's Derek's last name?
Markland?
Markland, is the person that handles that function for the planning department. He does a good job. The disconnect we've seen is just the lack of intimate knowledge of each particular beach access and how much pressure it can handle. Some of the things that come along with special event that are a problem are, of course, the physical size and people filtering out off of the public beach access. No parking at most of our neighborhood beach accesses. There is no parking available. And then just the depth of the beach, turtle nest locations, and stuff like that. So there'll be more review in that aspect as opposed to here's our public beach accesses, here's your permit for a special event, and then beach code enforcement having to handle the issues on the beach. We felt like that we could handle these issues at the permit level as opposed to trying to handle them after the fact, proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
So, the permitting design for my building is about 60% complete. Should have it to be approved at the second meeting in March, and then we'll immediately put out an RFP for construction. It's not a big renovation. It's about 1,200 square feet, all wood frame and interior inside my current maintenance warehouse. So I expect to be in there. I want to be by May 1st, but I'm realizing now it's probably going to be June 1st.
Now, where is it?
We're over on Blue Mountain Beach Road on Highway 83, in between 98 and 30A. Nondescript green warehouse back in the woods.
Okay.
I wondered where you were going to put it over there.
Yeah.
Is it still within your fenced area, or are you going to
Yes,
have to
ma'am.
expand
No,
that?
it's within the fenced area. What we're doing is renovating one of the bays inside of our warehouse. So it'll be
Okay. You're not putting up a new building?
No,
just-
no, no. We'll
Oh,
convert our current break room into a reception lobby, public reception lobby. Typical high-low counter. There'll be 2 desk spaces in there for clerks to work at, space for people to fill out applications. And then the other part is new break area for the maintenance and beach code enforcement crews. And then a second story inside will be all beach code enforcement office space.
That's where all the permits will be issued now?
Beach vendor permits are issued there now, and we'll take over the special event permitting. Beach-related special event, land, upland land special events will still be done by them. That's typically your races and stuff like that. Anything beach-related, since we're the code enforcement, beach code enforcement, it seemed like a good idea to let us do the permitting as well. Like I say, I firmly believe we can handle most of the behavior change at the permitting level. It's much easier.
Brian, I got a question for you. As far as when you take over the special event permitting and you guys are figuring out the capacity sizes, like
Figure out what?
the capacity,
Yes, sir.
each beach access, I know that Robbie Lund and Sammy have already done that for the bonfire permits, and I'm sure you've already talked to them.
Yep.
I know that y'all's new website, I guess what I'm asking is, have you talked to Sammy yet about making sure that your special event permit issuance doesn't conflict with any bonfires
Yes.
that we're issuing?
Yeah, that'll be part of the review process, is working with South Walton Fire District, who retains the authority to issue bonfire permits. So we'll make sure that we're not, the only difference is that special event permits, are typically, 4 to 8 months out in advance. Not all of them, but most of them. While the bonfire permits are 2 weeks out in advance. And so really what it will be is, there's already a very good collaborative effort between us, and there'll just be more of that to making sure that public beach accesses aren't overwhelmed with special events, bonfires, or whatever. Yep. Okay. Moving on.
Well, I do have a question.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to be taking
No, no.
Our neighborhood has a beach dinner on the beach with the neighbors that are already gonna be down there that day.
Yes, ma'am.
We do that 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay.
And there's probably, on a good week, on a good dinner on the beach, it'll probably be 50 people.
Okay.
Is that gonna be considered an event that we would have to?
Are you on a public beach access, or are you on a
Neighborhood.
HOA-controlled beach?
Neighborhood beach access, the one.
Won't affect you at all. If your HOA owns title to the main high water line, then you're not affected unless you have more than 50 people.
Okay, and if we did have more than 50?
If you have more than 50 people, then you should be applying for a special event permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So item 6, that was most stuff in item 6. Item A was what I was talking about, us taking over the permits and what we'll be asking for. Section 6B is the graduated schedule of cost versus people. Item C was us assessing the physical sizes of the beach accesses and establishing a value of people that can be there. 7, Section 7, 2259, once again, well, actually, I need to correct myself. I mean, the special event was changed from 50 to 30 people. So there's a couple of triggers that will require a special event permit. One of them is people. One of them is if you desire to do something that's not normally allowed by code. Okay, now, most of the code things are universal to public beach and privately controlled beach. Some items are not the same, okay? So like glass, lighting, and all that is universal to public or private. So if you're having a neighborhood gathering down there that is organized, and you're gonna have more than 30 people, you ought to be, applying for a special event permit because you have more than the threshold of people. If it's a unorganized, special event or unorganized gathering of people, I mean, we recognize that, people that come to different parties, sometimes it's, I invited, my immediate neighbors, and we only expected 20 people. They had friends and family in town. If we encounter a group like that, once again, officer discretion will be used to determine if it was an organized event or not. If you truly anticipated more people than what you thought you were, or whatever, and all that. So, if you're going to have an advertised party down there, you ought to apply for a special event permit. If you're getting together with friends and family and, enjoying the sunset, I think you'll be okay.
Brian, at what point do you have to have the beach vendor do the special event?
I think that
I mean, at all times, if it's a special event, do you need to have a beach vendor to do it, or like they're talking about, they
once
want to
again-
organize
Once
it
again,
themselves?
there's triggers and the graduated scale. So typically, if a vendor is doing a special event, it's the other triggers that require them to get a special event permit. Okay, so it's, there's
Is it just public beach? I was looking here that, the last one, it said, add a paragraph to define that all special events held on public beach must be conducted by a permitted beach vendor.
right.
And so, is it just a public beach? I mean, if they have a private beach and it's over 30 people, they can go ahead and get the special event permit
They
themselves?
can, right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's on public beaches. And what that was an attempt to have an accountable person. We have some people that,
Well, whoever pulls the permit's accountable, right?
well, yes, but the general practice over the last couple of years is the bride has been pulling all the permits because special event and wedding coordinators tell them they have to. Well, the bride.
Why
is
don't
not-
we have a deposit?
Because
or something?
before this was adopted, we only had a $50 fee.
Yeah.
And so now that's changed, based on, number of people. But what we wanted to do was to have, so the next morning, or, that evening, we roll up on it. We want to have some person that we can, take enforcement action against. And in the end, it was determined that the fines aren't the deterrent. What will be the deterrent is the ability to revoke a beach vending permit. Okay? So if a wedding event person continues to not follow the rules and is non-compliant, we can then ask for administrative hearing to revoke that permit. And with the understanding that they'll lose the ability to do business on the beach, we feel like that will gain the compliant behavior.
I just think about, most people around here are pretty wealthy, but there's some that aren't, and if they just want to have a little ceremony on the beach or something, and
They can do that.
they're renting a house, maybe a second tier or something, and they've got to go down to the public beach, and they've got 30 people, but they can't do it themselves, they've got to hire a wedding coordinator and, pay them a few grand just to go pull their permit, basically, that just...
But the graduated scale, has very little fees associated with that.
But that's what I'm saying, but you have to get a beach vendor. And you can, rather than, have your buddies run down there and set up some chairs for you.
If you got less than 30 people, then you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So, but once again, what we've experienced over the last couple of years.
I understand
is out of
the
control
reason.
behavior, and so.
It just seems like it's, might be shutting the people out that maybe
Yeah.
can't afford to get a beach vendor.
Once again, less than 30
A
people,
wedding.
I mean, if you got more than 30 people, that's a pretty big party.
And there's alternatives to the beach.
Most people want to go down there and just have their ceremony and go back up to the house and
Yeah.
have
And
a
there's- and
reception,
there's-
but they can't do that,
Well, yeah,
Well, if all they do is go down there and they don't have chairs and canopies and all that stuff.
Well, they're gonna have a little arch there, and I
Well,
mean,
well, yeah,
that's,
but
that's a
that-
special event. It doesn't
I-
matter if it's 15 minutes or.
Well, I think that's part of the issue, though, is if people have stuff that they are paying somebody to bring down on the beach to make a setup. It's, if you went anywhere else in the
Well-
world to have a wedding, if you go to,
Yeah.
your
To be honest
local
with you,
little. Yeah.
that verbiage added to the code was simply to strengthen it. Because the code already said, if you're offering services or goods for a fee, you're a vendor.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, certain industries were not being told that they had to be a vendor. And they were being, well, the way they were getting around that is they were having the bride or the person that wanted the special event to pull the permits. See what I'm saying?
Go back to church on the beach. I mean, that's an organized gather, whether they're standing up or sitting in chairs. It's an organized gathering. If it's more than 30 people, do they have to have a vendor?
Are they providing a service for a fee?
No.
My church is free. They don't charge me to go to it.
Okay, so the people, back to my point, the people that are setting up, to have their own wedding service, 30, 40, 50 people, if they're not charging anybody anything, they're not a vendor. Do they need to have a special event permit? Do they need to get a vendor to do it for them?
One of the triggers that causes a special event permit is if you're having a wedding at a public beach access.
And a public beach access.
Right.
At a public beach access, correct.
Is there a difference between public beach access and neighborhood beach access?
Yes, absolutely.
No, the neighborhood beach, there's regional and neighborhood.
What he asked is, all right, so we have two kinds of public beach accesses, regional beach accesses and neighborhood beach accesses. I think what you're asking about was a HOA-controlled private beach access.
Well, I don't know if that's what it is or not.
No.
No, hers is neighborhood.
Just Allen Loop. It's just a neighborhood access.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's
a
public.
neighborhood Public beach access. So if you're.
Allen Loop?
There's two. There's two right there close together.
There's West Allen Loop.
I
and
think
then
one
there's-
is the neighborhood, and the other is the public. It's got parking and restrooms and everything.
Both public.
Both are public.
Both public, all of them are public.
both-
Yeah.
Right,
They're either public or private.
right,
Private's blocked off,
Neighborhood,
gated.
Regional are both public.
correct.
Yeah.
I was just trying to distinguish between a HOA-controlled private beach access. I thought that's what we were talking about earlier.
No, sir.
Okay.
I really don't know, is anything.
HOA would be where there's a condo that owns part of the beach.
No, this is just a neighborhood beach access.
Yeah, that's a public beach
That's
access.
a public
It's
beach.
public.
Right. And keep in mind, that both of those are very narrow. The one at West Allen Loop is how wide, Josh? 66 feet, and the one at Lake Causeway is only, I believe, 33 feet. Is that the one on the west side of the sky? Yeah. So that one's only 33 feet. We're building another one on the east side of the sky that'll also be 33 feet. They're actually kind of pie-shaped. You gotta be careful.
We gotta build something.
And those
in
also
between.
exist on easements. There's another ownership relationship. Some of our neighborhood beach accesses are on property that we own, that we either gained by dedication or by road right-of-way conveyance. And then some of them are on easements. And the easement is just that. We enjoy most of those are what's called the former government lot easements. Back in the day, most of this property was government lots. And on those government lots, the government not being a developer, they put easements on the north and east or west side that are 33 foot. Okay? And so, since those were government patent deeds, those easements remain forever. Whereas a regular easement on a piece of property, after 35 years, you can ask for it to go away. And there's other ways I think you can get rid of them too, but the ones on government lots last forever. And so, depending on how the people that bought those lots and what they decided to do with that easement. So the ones that we own that are former government lot easements were converted to road right-of-ways and then dedicated to the county. In the case of Dune Allen ones, that was never converted into a road right-of-way. So it exists as an easement today. When Vizcaya developed their property, the person that purchased those government lots and then replatted that, part of their plat included an easement on both sides for public beach access. And so we built the one on the west side, and we're fixing to start the one on the east side. That is a project being done by FDEP with some of their early restore money. We're simply the recipient of a completed project. In other words, Walton County TDC is not building it themselves. FDEP through the National Restoration Disaster Act, NRDA. Some acronym. Yeah. So anyway, that project, like I say, we built on that easement and then given the finished product given to Walton County. But they're on easements. And so with that, there is a certain amount of respect that has to be given to the people that actually own the property, which is Vizcaya. So, anyway.
So Brian,
That's why we have some neighborhood beach accesses that don't have vendor zones on them. Because we really can't put a vendor zone on an easement because we don't own the property. Okay.
so you mentioned, back to weddings, that any wedding is considered.
The ordinance says if you're having a wedding, you gotta get a special event permit.
For any wedding.
For any wedding on a public beach access.
So even if a bride and groom just wanted to walk down there with their parents and a preacher, 5, 7 people, they'd have to get a special event and have a vendor to handle it all for them.
Right. Or they're subject to enforcement action. Now, let's go back. Let's talk about this because I don't want to be left with the county's just trying to make it hard for people to do this. The reason that terms and conditions were inserted into the code, I think it was in 2003, it might have been 2007, was because we had instances where there was more than one wedding at a public beach access and it got, conflict.
But anybody has to pull the permit. But to have to hire a vendor to pull the permit for you, to me, I understand having to get the permit. I understand having to, regulate how many special events are at one beach access.
Yeah.
But for regardless of the size, it could be 5 people, could be 50 people. But to say, some people that aren't charging money, that they just want to go down, enjoy the beach, mostly for the photos,
Right.
that they can't do it themselves, that they need to hire a vendor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that doesn't seem right.
Well,
I've been fussing about that through the whole
yeah, I know,
thing,
and I
so.
understand. The problem is that our simple beach wedding are now few and far between. They're events, and they cause not only beach congestion related issues, they cause upland property related issues with parking and.
I went to one last summer that, we were all at the house, we stopped traffic for, 5 minutes as we were all crossing the street,
Yeah.
but went down there, had the ceremony back at the house. We weren't down there, I know, not 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and, that you can't do that. I don't know.
And there was nothing set up on the beach?
No.
No chairs,
There was probably 5 chairs for the older people, to
So
sit down
they-
right in front. Everybody else stood around it.
They did everything themselves?
Oh, yeah. Carried down a few chairs,
didn't-
had a little altar,
So they rented something to put down there?
I think it was homemade.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, instead of dealing with the public beach, they could talk to a condo or walk in and.
Well, yeah, but a lot of
Or
people,
the private residence.
yeah, and they're probably gonna want a fee to have an event on their property. I'm thinking of families, they're not staying on the beach, they're not in a house that has a private beach there. Maybe they're a couple, second tier, third tier. They can't walk down to the beach, have a little event, then walk back to their house and, have this reception, you know, without having a vendor, you know, a wedding, you know, vendor to organize it for them, you know, and.
Yeah, there'll probably be a new, you know, cottage industry of cheap beach weddings.
Pirate.
My guess is if it's as quick and
No,
innocuous
I mean,
as you're talking about, they're not going to get caught.
There is a.
Oh, no, it'll be on Facebook, right, guys? I mean, there'll be pictures on Facebook of it.
I
you
know your code enforcement people have time to go looking through Facebook to try to find people that did that, don't they?
Face recognition.
I don't have to go look for it. People call me and tell me, Brian, you need to look at Facebook.
Emails.
Yeah. So anyway, I understand your sentiment, and
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay. So where were we? We were at 7. We were at section 7. So we answered that. Section 8. Section.
So 7, it did change to 30, right?
Right. Change 30. So section 2259, special event permit application. Once again, that was us taking over the special event permits. So we'll, you know, have more review and more process time to make sure that the inappropriate special event is not allowed on a beach that can't handle it. Section 9, 2254G, this is regulation of use and conduct on beach and waterways, typically for general public. Item A was generators on the beach, restrict generators based on noise output, power output, and or physical size. The idea behind that is we'll take one of the common models and establish its physical parameters as the thresholds. What I'm talking about is your typical Honda EI 2000, and so that'll be the thresholds. Paragraph B, my favorite one, adding paragraph prohibiting steel-bladed shovels on the beach. This was an attempt to solve the problem of holes on the beach and solve it without deterring the young kid with a plastic shovel and a bucket from digging holes. So we felt that by limiting the device used to dig holes, that we could solve the big holes that are dug and left on the beach. The problem is being left on the beach. So throughout the discussion, I used the term steel-bladed shovel. I used it in a generic term. However, it has been made very clear to me now that you can buy a graphite shovel, an aluminum shovel, and a plastic shovel. So the deal is that, you know, you can't buy all those readily at the local hardware stores, and we think that by having this prohibition that we can solve some of the hole digging, because most of the holes that we found that were big enough to drive our cars into were dug by a regular commercial shovel. That's what that's about.
Doesn't that mostly happen like within 1 mile of
It
beach
happens. You'd be
area
surprised.
in
You'd be
about
surprised.
1 month of the year?
No, you'd be surprised. You know, the sand sofa
Yeah.
is very popular, and I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of effort that people would go to dig these holes. We've had some holes so big that we've had to take our bobcat onto the beach to fill them in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these people must have dug all day on them.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, I don't know what y'all do when y'all go to the beach, but the last thing I want to do is dig a hole big enough to put a car in.
Back in, you know, the 70s when there was nobody out here, when we'd come down to the beach, we'd go down there with shovels and dig mazes. We had no idea. Nobody talked to us about turtles. You didn't see anything about turtles. I'd have a fit if my kids did that today,
Yeah.
but you know what? We didn't know any better at the time, so
Right.
education's going to help a lot of that too.
so,
We just have to keep working on it.
Right. So accompanying this steel-bladed prohibition is also an enhanced effort by our beach ambassador crew, the one that we employ, as well as the volunteer beach ambassadors, on what we call beach etiquette items. Mm-hmm. And we're also working on what I call a singular message signage program. If you've been to our beach accesses, you'll see our big sign that has everything listed on it. And I'm sure you've walked right by it and said, "Oh, what a beautiful sign." So I have learned that visiting other destinations, that the singular message sign appropriately place is much more effective. So our marketing department is looking at this and.
I love the routed boardwalk.
Do what?
The routing and the boardwalks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
That's a fine example of
Yeah.
a singular message sign. So we're looking at, I don't want to clutter up the boardwalks with signage, but, a previous program we had was our small signs that said these dunes aren't made for walking. Very effective. Keep people off the beach and they're small. So we're looking at stuff like that, that has, a nice positive message that will change behavior. So don't let me catch any council member, committee members on the beach with steel-bladed shovels.
Now, what if you're cleaning up after a bonfire? But you're not a vendor?
Vendors aren't allowed to have these. I don't
Once
believe.
again.
Well, they're allowed to have special equipment.
They
They're not
are,
allowed to have
vendors are
shovel.
allowed, vendors are allowed.
Yeah.
They are.
And, as well
But
as.
if you're not a vendor cleaning up,
If you're cleaning up after your bonfire,
They don't clean up
officer
after
discretion will probably come into play.
okay.
Is it on your property? You probably can do that, if it's on your property.
Okay. That's all I want to talk about, steel-bladed shovels. Item C was the tent, once again, 6x6x6. Item D and item E are the clear zones at the water's edge and the toe of the dune. So, all those are contained within what's called Ordinance 2017-05, which then converts to Chapter 22. So if you go to Muni Code, the changes have not been made yet. There's typically a 45 to 60 day delay. But Ordinance 2017-05 was adopted on whatever day it was. What day was that, Josh? You know?
February 7th.
It was
February
signed. That's the date it was signed.
Yeah, February 7th. So,
Thank you.
questions, comments?
They also have a copy of the fees.
Right. Fees are done by resolution. The code says that fees are done by resolution, which is different than ordinance. They can be adopted quicker. But anyway, so that's a new fee and fine schedule. Some of it was changed based on what was changed in the code with special events, permits, and with beach vending permits. Yes, sir.
Getting back to our beach access in the Allen Loop,
Yes, sir.
crossing 38 on an easement, whatever,
West Allen Loop or
West.
Causeway?
west.
Okay.
The neighborhood wanted to get together to enhance it, plant flowers, bring, level it out, make more parking places for golf carts, et cetera. Who would we work with on your staff
You'd work with Josh Irvin right here.
to,
As far as increasing golf cart parking spaces, that would have to be something that'd go through Destination Improvement Committee and then TDC Council and then BCC. If you want to do some simple enhancement of, landscaping and all that, we can work internally and handle that. Of course, we're not going to plant a bunch of palm trees or anything. We'll be talking about low-lying vegetation and all that.
but we would like to have a workshop and invite
Yeah.
Josh and.
Josh is right here. Get with him after the meeting,
Okay.
and he can help y'all with that. And one thing we have to keep in mind is that in any enhancement to public property, the intention is good at the beginning, but the maintenance of it going long term is what usually fails, and then we're left with maintenance. And so, while I want to beautify all of our beach accesses, and we're working on that, if you remember our parking plan, a lot of the parking plan stuff we're doing is also landscaping, what I call beautification. We also have to be cognizant of the ongoing maintenance, the resources we have to do it, and the resources that are available at the site. Like, for instance, irrigation is not allowed on domestic water supply. Okay, regional utilities, the county adopted a policy back in the early 2000s of not allowing domestic water supply to be used for irrigation.
Oh,
Okay, so in other words, we can't get a meter.
right, there's no problem with that.
So the irrigation would have to be done by well. which is probably hard to get a well that close to the beach that'd be viable.
We saw
Shallow
Just
water.
dig a hole. Still
But the salt water, I mean, we tried to put a well down here at the bridge for our park down here, and we couldn't get a shallow well that didn't have the proper fresh water versus
That's why
salt water.
regional's getting the water north of the bay now. All the wells south started getting saltwater intrusion in.
Right. Right. So anyway, we got to think about stuff like that. So we like to do native planting that once established, can maintain itself as far as watering issues. So get with Josh and y'all hash it out, and we'll come to a fair and equitable understanding and agreement.
Is that the one that is just the little bitty one right at the end of Allen Loop? Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Brian, but it didn't somebody that lives right there adjacent to it donate a or whatever? I thought part of that agreement, because I used to have a house near there. I thought part of that agreement was that there really couldn't be but just the most limited sort of parking there.
Well, it's
because
common
it
law.
blocked.
They got a driveway.
Well, it blocked their
Yeah, there's a driveway.
They couldn't
You
get to the
can't, a
house.
landlocked house has to have access to it from its street.
Right.
Once
And
again,
it's easement.
Well, that's an easement, yeah.
It-
That's why all the streets were on easements.
Once
There's
again,
33-foot easements.
government
we can't,
lots.
we can't block him from taking his car to and from his house.
Right.
And so when you take that to the parking judge, and he says, well, that's special treatment. So tickets from the sheriff's office to people parking there get thrown out because they don't apply to the people that live there that have the right to park there. So it's in a state of flux. If you get a ticket there and you take it to the judge, you can get it thrown out by bringing all this history of that place out.
Right.
But if you have a designated spots, keep cars out of there that don't belong.
Red right away.
Lloyd's cars do belong. Keep the ones out that, and just let golf carts parking there have designated spots for golf carts.
Where they're just
Then
actually.
it'd be fine. It would be perfect for the neighborhood. There'd be more parking places for cars on 30A because all these golf carts won't be taking up huge places for.
I was just curious because I'd always been told you couldn't park in there at all, and then I
That's
would,
because
you know.
Lloyd put up these signs that said no parking.
But Ryan.
I
guess we're on to council comments
There's a
now.
particular relationship there.
Right. What?
Once again, started off as a government easement. It was converted to a road right of way a long time ago. All right, dedicated to the county. The county owns the property. However, because of Lloyd owns that property that is one tier in, I'll say, second tier in off the road. There was an agreement made between him and the county of access across it and dedicated parking for him. All right, so it was agreement that was between him and the county through the TDC. I don't have the exact date, but I have the paperwork in our files. And so there was an issue of people trying to park their cars there when it's a neighborhood beach access, and there should be no car parking there. People thought they could park there because Lloyd parked his cars there. And then he would call the sheriff because he didn't have a place to park or couldn't get out. And so what we did is we changed the parking signs that are for him, okay, that are actually, for his use, to a different type of non-state standard sign in hopes that it would show people that this is a private parking area, okay? And then we moved, didn't we move the emergency parking with the golf cart parking, Josh?
We added golf cart parking behind the bike rack.
Okay, so we added some golf cart parking, and we have an emergency vehicle parking area there. But we don't want to add car parking because
Not even
right.
thinking of suggesting that. We want to keep, and it's a safety issue there too, because the crosswalk is in the wrong place. The stop sign is not visible on 30A. The intersection's practically invisible now. I don't know what has happened in the last few years, but there's been changes in the scenery, and it's just a dangerous situation to walk across, much less have cars backing out and that kind of thing.
Let us engage the county engineer that handles municipal traffic concerns, crosswalks and all that. And I've been wanting to do something at that entrance to that anyway,
Yeah.
to make it more beautiful, so to speak, as well as less dangerous.
And while we're working on the best guy, those down there seem like everybody be down there at the same time anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, we discussed improvements there a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah,
There
West
was
Allen
money
Loop.
or something available maybe
Yeah.
for anybody else have anything to say?
Yes, sir.
Just on this fees and restrictions, I guess it is. I'm just curious, with the dogs on the beach,
Yes.
what does that relate to? Is there a $30 fee?
You have to get a permit to take your dog on the
You have to
beach.
have a permit for the dog, have a dog in it.
Yeah, you get a tag.
And so there's a permit for the beach, and this is for,
I don't think your dog has to have a permit if you're not going to take it on the beach. If you just have a dog in the county, I don't think you're required to have a permit. Probably, there's a vaccination rule by the health department, but.
You get a separate tag if you want to take it on the
I'll take your
beach.
dog on the beach.
You're only allowed
this is
certain
good for
hours.
public beach, right? There's an
Correct.
exemption for on private
Right.
property. There's an
The
exemption for
ordinance-
dog owners that doesn't apply.
Right, the section of the code that applies to this 2231 has an exemption for dogs on private beach.
Okay, so this is just the
Public. Right.
beach permit, public beach for dogs.
Correct.
Thank you.
Are we out public comments?
Yes, go ahead.
Do this or?
All the time.
Thank you for coming up here so we can hear you.
Yes.
That helps.
Okay, my name is Georgine Newell, and a few of you know me. I've been involved in this, unfortunately, only since November of last year. But I want to say three things. First of all, I want to thank everybody on this committee for all the hard work that you've put in over the last year. And the TDC and Beach Management for how quickly they reacted, went into action to take the ordinances that were just changes that were just made in February and get them communicated out to all the parties involved. So that took a lot of coordination, and I was very, very impressed with everything that happened. I've watched the videos of the vendor meeting. I've attended the beach ambassadors meetings, and the message is coming through very clear and very consistently. So that to me is a great thing. Two things I want to comment on. And first of all, it's about the education process we need to do. And the second one is about the complaint form. So the easy one, the quick one, is education. I know that through the officers, the code enforcement officers' contacts and the ambassadors' contacts with people on the beach, we will educate people. But we still haven't really gone out publicly and said to the general public, and most of all our visitors, at least I don't know of anything yet, here's some big changes we made this year in order to make the beach more harmonious. So I don't know what plans the TDC has for that. I don't know what plans this committee has to try to work on that, but education about the changes here, because there's a lot of changes, I think is really important. So at any point in time,
I can do that. We are currently working to revise our visitor guide, or for the new 2017-2018 visitor guide, to include all these changes. And there'll be a paragraph or a page in there that explains there are some changes, and it would be done in our typical positive messaging format. We're also working with our marketing department to change all of our signs at our beach accesses, okay, to include all these new code restrictions or prohibitions or whatever you want to call them. And we have a enhanced effort. We have a newsletter we send out once a month called Connections. We're enhancing that to include more of the immediate messaging of changes to beach management, the TDC's effort in promoting the beach and all that. We also work closely with the different media outlets, be it news or printed media, to get stories out. Okay? So you can expect that here in the near future to see a segment on local news channels explaining that there are some revisions, and it'll probably be a couple of different news articles that explain, instead of trying to do them all in one, I'd like to do it where we have, certain segments of it to talk about. And then, of course, in our local newspapers, the Defuniak Herald, the Beach Breeze, the Walton Sun, and sometimes Northwest Florida Daily News, we'll have different articles in there. But the main push will be through our media outlet connections, our website, and through our various written publications.
What about flyers or something? Say the rules that
Last
we
year-
give to all the bed
Yep.
tax?
Last year, we had a program. We were giving out, they were plastic laminated media, and they had a discount for our visitor center store on that. And the reason we put that discount on there is so that people would retain it. Because in the past, when we've handed out published media on the beach, it usually ends up as litter on the beach. And so we recognize that. But last year, it was an attempt to get out safety information, the texting message. There's a couple other messages on there, but that worked pretty well. So we're looking at doing that again this year.
I think it's something that you could put in the rental units.
Well,
I mean, the news and the newspaper and all that,
Yeah.
that educates the residents.
Right.
But, you've got the turnover,
Yeah.
you need that every week.
Yep. Actually, we have a program where we give our visitors guides, and we actually take them to all the bed tax collectors. We also distribute them to the airports, and to anybody that wants a stack of them or more than we normally give, they are welcome to come and get them. Pardon me? The beachgoer guide goes in each unit. Now, we don't have control after we give them to the bed tax collector as to how far they go. We would like to see them in every unit every week so that the changeover and people can get them and read them. And actually, a lot of people do read them. Our experience on the beach as beach code enforcement is that, some people are truly ignorant of the code. When I say truly ignorant, that the visitors to our beach. But by and large, most of them do get it. The non-compliant behavior is simply a choice in a lot of cases to be non-compliant. And depending on what it is, leave no trace, some of that's ignorant, but our program of picking it up every night, the word gets around pretty quick. We also discovered a couple years ago that some of those code enforcement messages are what's considered negative messaging. And so we have to overcome that, which I think we do a fairly decent job at. But obviously, if the message is not getting to the end user, which is our 7-day visitor, then we can do better. So
I think the big thing, and I completely agree with Miss Georgine here, that I think it's a much, much bigger deal than we're thinking. It's not the local. Sure, the local will see the news or word spreads quick. That, hey, there's no more tents. Hey, you got to be 15 feet off the water, whatever the case may be. But it's the people that come here once a year, in summer or the spring, that I, as a local who lives here and depends on tourism, and B, obviously a vendor, I don't want people to get blindsided that they bring their tent or whatever it is, something as silly as a tent. Okay,
Right.
I don't care for a tent, but the thing is, they may take it so personal that they brought their $250 tent down that they just bought or whatever, that they can't use it. And we were the beach service manager for a beach in Blue Mountain a few years ago, and they made a rule that year that there would be no tents on the beach at all. So we were in that transition period, even on a section that there would be no vendors, and they asked us to tell people and enforce it.
right.
So we were that individual, and when people came down, put up their tent, and we said, hey, we're so sorry. Unfortunately, the HOA made a rule you can't have tents. people would lose it to a point that they look at the enforcement officer, the security guard, or in your case, Mr. Jeff and them, and basically said, "Screw you, I'm not moving my tent." And this was a 400-foot beach. I don't want that person to basically say, "I'm not coming to South Walton again or 30A again because they didn't," whatever the case may be. As ridiculous as that may be, I'm very nervous this year about tents and 15 feet to the water if that's actually enforced. To be honest, I hope it's kind of not enforced to the general public because I don't want them to have a bad experience. In my opinion, the keys to this are the vacation management companies that I think you have to reach the people before they come down. Because if their expectation is, "Hey, I can't do this," and they just kind of know that's what it is. I think them, vacation management companies, and number 2, 30A.com or SoWall. If they're posting stuff about it in a very positive manner, just like you say, I don't think it's a big deal. They're like, "Hey, I didn't buy a tent or bring a tent this year because I know it's not allowed." It's not a big deal, but I'm scared that people are going to raise Cain and be very, very upset.
Yeah, well, you're probably somewhat correct in your assumption. There's going to be some grief over it because people didn't know and may feel like they haven't been informed properly. Once again, we can't force the bed tax collector to change their website. We encourage them to. All of our beachgoer guides and visitor guides will have the correct language in it. Our media outlets, our Facebook page, our Connections newspaper, our website will have it on there. We'll work with the county to have it on there. It'll be buried probably too deep, in the county's website because they expect us to get it out there.
With these vacation management companies, they'll send 4 emails to the guests before they even arrive. I mean, that's something that I don't know how all that works. If there's some kind of blast email that can go to bed tax collectors and say, "Hey, due to these upcoming changes, might be a good idea for your guests to know about these 3 hot button items."
Yeah, just a few bullet points that will affect all these people so much.
And I don't know that.
I mean, if somebody comes down and maybe they didn't hear about it and they bring their tent out the first day, and the code enforcement comes by, "Now you got to get rid of that." Okay, get rid of the tent. Next day they build their couch on there with their shovel. Code enforcement comes by that day. "No, guys, you can't do that." Yeah, by the end of the week, they're going to throw their hands up and never come back again,
I know, but conversely, we have people that are asking us more dominantly to change this behavior.
I'm
saying tell them the behavior. If they get badgered every day when they come by, give them a flyer in their you can't do these things anymore.
You can't go through a public beach access without seeing that message twice. Okay, in every rental agreement, it's supposed to be included. But once again, we can't. After the information is given to the bed tax collector, we have a hard time enforcing them, making sure. Now,
but they all want their guests to have a good time. They don't want them to.
Therein lies part of the issue. I found that when we started the Leave No Trace program, when we started doing it a different way. The first year we started picking them up with our beach maintenance crews during the night. We allowed people to come retrieve their equipment. And so mining information from the people that came in there, I came across a certain property management company that was continually popping up as where the people were staying. Okay? And so when contacted that company, that's a negative message to give to I don't want my visitors to know that they can't leave their stuff on the beach overnight. And I said, well, how negative is the message when the stuff's not there in the morning?
Yeah.
And so it was just a simple understanding of no, I don't want to give out negative messaging. I want my people to come here and, wide open, man.
Well, a negative experience is a lot worse than a negative message.
I agree. So that's the bump that we're trying to get over, is that it's not negative messaging. In fact, it's positive messaging when you let people know what the rules and regulations are. You walk into any public park, what's the first sign you come across? Rules and regulations. Yeah. Are you offended by it? No. You say, man, I'm glad they told me that I can't have glass on the pool skirting area, because I was certainly fixing to go in and get me a nice craft beer, but now I think I'll just get me a draft beer in a cup.
So is there any kind of plan, to summarize all that? I understand and I agree. Is there a plan is this the marketing department? Is this someone that can go to Mike Ragsdale in 30 days, or someone that can go in an email blast to the bed tax collectors to say, for your benefit of your guests, so they hopefully continue to come here for years and they don't have a negative experience, let's get this positive message out.
We already do that. We do that through our sales department and our marketing department. When we distribute our visitors and beachgoers guides, we have an extensive database that we blast emails out through. Last year, I sent code enforcement guys out during the distribution time of the visitor and beachgoers guides so that they could be the face of people. Hey, make sure that you inform your guests. We've recognized over the last couple of years that guests don't seem to know all the rules. So, make sure they get a copy of the beachgoers guide so they understand all the rules and regulations so they don't encounter us on the
I hear
beach.
you. I'm talking about before. Like, we've had to explain all these new rules changes to all the vacation management companies we work with because they didn't have a clue it was even going on.
Well, it's not because they weren't given the information.
Sure, but I think that if we were very strategic about this, that we could be ahead of the curve because the vacation management company has 500 things on their mind going on. You're right, they're not going to pay attention, they don't really care. But when it's presented to them as, maybe this is my job as an outsider to say, I want people to come back, so I'm going to do this personally. But hey, let your people know these 4 bullet points before they even come. Throw it in your confirmation email, the very last little line. Hey, get Mike Ragsdale to run a story on it. I just want to be a little more proactive than, hey, they're already here.
I think you're incorrect in saying that we're not proactive, Philip.
No,
and that's what I'm trying to get to
you.
you. That's what you just said. But maybe you need to come out with our visitor and sales team and help distribute these, and you'll get a better understanding of what we do.
I'm trying to be proactive and give good feedback for everything that we're trying to do. I'm just saying personally.
But it's at the same time you're taking a dig at us, and I don't appreciate it.
I'm not making any dig at all. I'm
Yes,
making
you
a
are.
solution right now. I'm not making a dig. This is a solution that I have agreed with everybody. Hey, I'm trying to be proactive so everyone knows about the rules that have been changed. I'm not disagreeing with any rule. I'm
Okay.
being very positive, hey, how we should do this.
Okay, so let's,
Okay, poor Georgie,
yeah,
that would
let's-
be simple.
Maybe if the sales and marketing team could distribute to the committee their plan, then you will see how extensive or what they've accomplished and that sort. Just
Simple.
discussion.
What was your other one? That was the easy one. What was the other one?
yeah.
The complaint.
Okay, so we all know that statistics on what issues people have, complaints, for lack of a more gentle term, are basically the thing that we use in order to make change, or at least this is what it's always been relied upon. So the complaint form, this prior year, pretty much was buried in code enforcement, and I have a copy of what it was, and it was considered a complaint worksheet, and then beach management has jumped through some big hoops to try to get it within 2 clicks of the homepage of the TDC.
Right.
And I've been watching the progress since February 1st, and it was down about 6 clicks. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's working
it
its
is.
way back up. So 2 points on it. First of all, I am shocked that the TDC does not have on their homepage, top menu bar, concerns or questions tab. Just shocked. It's as if they don't want to hear if anybody really wants to contact them. You have to go all the way down, and then there's just contact. Here, the second click, again, not on the home page, you have to go under industry partners. Now, 3.6 million people coming from 10, 15 different states generally. How are they going to know that beach management is under the bottom of the homepage under industry partners? Okay, so that's off the top menu. Then there is also a more direct URL, which is southwaltoncodenforcement.com. I got that from ambassadors. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. And my big question is, obviously you made a separate URL for that, so there's got to be a plan for that, and how you're going to use it. But just about the current form, the current form is very, very intimidating. It uses terms like violator, violator's location, violation issue, complainants, and I just don't know that it's going to bring us the statistics that we need. I mean, as a visitor, there's no way I would ever fill that thing out because I'd be afraid that I'd be hauled into court and prosecuted or have to be involved in some sort of a case. So from my personal standpoint, from a visitor standpoint, I don't think it's a woman-friendly place. Up to that point in time, it says contact code enforcement, and it says, and then it goes into it. It has a GPS. If you guys haven't been out there and seen it, it really, they did this very quickly, and so from a mechanism standpoint, I'm very impressed with it. But I just can't believe that there isn't first of all, if visitors know to contact the TDC, don't have any idea if they know that the TDC visitors.
Yep.
How do
complaints? They know. Worked in the visitor center for years.
Oh, okay. Well, I have been randomly calling the visitor center to say I want to create a complaint, and so we need education there. But how do visitors know that they're to contact the TDC if they have a problem? So
It's the visitor center.
Well,
but how many visitors really go there, and how many visitors really contact that?
Well,
Well, if they want to,
our
they know where it
signage,
is.
our
But if
signage
you're-
at the
if
beach
you're on the
access.
Pretty,
beach, if you're on the beach and there's an issue right now, that we need a way to get the message out that they can, and not everybody takes their phone to the beach either, by the way, but at least the ones that do, if they know that URL with the www.code, South Walton Code Enforcement, because I went on it after the ambassador thing too, just to see it. And so one of your suggestions, if I'm hearing you right, is let's try to change the terminology a little bit where it doesn't sound quite so threatening, maybe.
The form to me is intimidating.
Yeah, because I agree. Sometimes we used to, in my HOA, have these violations, and we changed them actually to courtesy notices to say to people that are first-time offenders, hey, you probably don't realize this, but this isn't allowed. I'm not suggesting we use that terminology, but I get your drift.
It's all
Georgia.
about statistics.
Yeah.
If you're going to continue to use the statistics
Right.
as a barometer of the problems we're having, if you don't put up something that's easy to get to, user-friendly,
Right.
and welcoming, nobody's going to use it. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. And then you're going to be back at square one, and I personally will fight any statistical question that's out there next year when we come up to this again. Because I just don't think that part is all brought together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood.
The request for feedback might be a better way to
Yeah,
pull
I think there needs,
responses on the positive and any negative side that may come up.
I agree. There needs to be two opportunities for discussing issues with beach code enforcement and beach maintenance. The complaint form was strictly for beach code enforcement, and the reason it was set up like it was is because in previous years we had allowed emails, texts, and simple phone calls. The result was we don't get complete information, and a lot of times we need to be able to follow up with the complainant, okay? And so that's why the form was done like it is. Our attempt at it we have now is actually through a GIS-based, ArcGIS-based program. And the reason is because we wanted to be able to capture location, all right? So when people submit the form, it immediately drops a pin on a map. So I was looking at a way of using a pictorial way to show concentrations of different things. We have found some complications in getting that to transmit to us just the information itself so that it can go into a process mode by beach code enforcement officers. So we're going to change that to a different way of doing it. It won't be ArcGIS based. It'll be simply a form-based program, web-based, that'll send us the information we need. But we got to have complete information. I do understand what she says about statistical data. We do use that in some, in the making the recommendations for code revisions. It clearly has been challenged on both sides as not a complete picture, and her argument of it not being completely accessible has a lot of weight to it. And so we're working on getting that done so that it is more readily available. As far as knowing who to contact, it's on our signage at our public beach accesses. Once again, that sign's very busy and contains a lot of information, and I'll be honest with you, I couldn't tell you everything that's on it, even though I've seen it 1,000 times. So once again, maybe we need to go back or consider some of this in the singular message. Beach-related issues, beach maintenance-related issues, contact Josh Irvin, and we'll put his cell phone number on. Beach code enforcement issues. No, I'm seriously, but perhaps that's an easier way to do it, or a more effective way to do it. But in the end, the code complaint form serves two purposes. One is to gather all the information, and the second one, we use it as some statistical reasoning at the end of the year. But its primary function is to gather information, give people a quick, convenient method of sending us a complaint.
I like it. I think it's a good idea. I just think that, getting the word out is going to be
Yeah,
like
it is.
everything. I mean, everything we do here,
Yeah.
it's getting the word out,
Yeah.
number one, getting the message is
Yeah.
there. And then number two is consistent enforcement.
Right.
And when we get those, I think we'll be in great shape.
Yeah.
Did you say you're getting rid of that, of the arc map?
Pardon me?
Did I hear you just say a minute ago that you're gonna be eliminating the pin dropping to the GIS?
The complaint form we use now won't, we haven't figured out a way to distribute that information to our code enforcement officers via email. And it's an ArcGIS problem. It's not the form problem. So unfortunately, our original intent of being able to drop the pins, we're not going to be able to do both. So we're going to redo the form. Basically, it's just going to be a URL change. It's going to take you to a form that then you fill it out, you hit submit. It will send it straight to our code enforcement officers.
Oh, so the one they just told us in the beach ambassador volunteer meeting is not going to work then? The one that's the
Correct.
URL with the solid
The
Walton
problem
code
we're having
enforcement?
with it right now is we cannot, for whatever reason, I thought it was a simple fix, but
Oh.
apparently it's not. But
Okay.
the way
Good
to
to know,
transfer
because we just distributed
information
that
is,
to all of them.
yeah,
They did, yeah.
it'll be the exact same thing. I mean, it's the same form. I'll try to doll up the actual form so that it's not quite so intimidating. But once again, beach code enforcement, we think in efficiency. We don't always think in, marketing sense.
Yeah, maybe you can call it, instead of a complaint, a concern, for instance, and instead of the complainant, you can just say contact person, or something like that, with a phone number, because you're right, if you can't talk to somebody, you don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sure you all can come up with some really good
Yeah, like I said, once
ideas
again,
for how to
we-
gentle it a bit.
we tend to be efficient, not pretty.
Well, yeah,
But I understand, I mean, those are all good concerns.
yeah.
And
But
the
I-
other thing is make a beach maintenance comment form, as opposed to, that would be very friendly, we don't necessarily have to have that person's name.
Well, I want to
Yeah.
make a compliment to, and I hope this is the case across all the beach, not just the part that I see routinely. But, as you know, I had my concerns about how often the trucks were riding way up on the beach instead of down closer to the water. And I want to commend Josh and whoever else Josh, everybody that's been involved in helping spread the word among your staff to please stay down as close as they can safely traverse. I've been really pleased. I've seen
appreciate
truck
it.
after truck after truck, and they are all down there. And I was tickled about that.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, we try hard to, reduce our footprint on the beach, but we also have a function we got to complete.
Yeah.
And last year it was 72,000 bags of garbage.
All right, any more council comments?
Just one quick question. In this ballpark, how much money do we have in the bank for beach restoration and TDC money that's collected?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. 1 penny is taken, as a tax for bed tax collections that is earmarked for beach renourishment.
1 out of 4, or 1 out of 4.5?
Right now, we have a 4% bed tax. We changed that from 4.5 to 4 in 2015. I want to say, do you know that number? 22?
It was 18 to 19 a year
18.
ago.
Yeah.
And that money is earmarked and can't be stolen and used by sheriffs and
Right.
courts.
Florida state
Or
legislator,
collectors.
set up the TDCs under state statute, and then the monies that are collected as a bed tax, if they have a specific earmark, they can only be used for that purpose. And so in that case, there's legislation that says 1% can be collected for beach renourishment, and that's all that it can be used for. Now, some of that, beach renourishment includes engineering fees, coastal management fees, and all that. Okay,
And
so it's
right
not
now
all
we're-
just putting sand on the beach.
Current status is it's tabled and we're just waiting on something, and we're
Next
trying
door.
to work with the Corps of Engineers to make sure that they're able to table it.
I'm going to let Matt answer that. Matt's our coastal engineer.
So, yes, for the previous HSDR project, that beach restoration project, that was our plan A, if you will, and it's about a year and a half ago, that was tabled. The property owners were not willing to sign the easements, and the Corps of Engineers was not able to construct the project if they didn't have those easements in hand. We're still collecting the funding. The 1 cent bed tax is still there, and it's still being collected and placed in reserves. But we need to keep in mind, we had anticipated the first phase of that project to be around $50 million. And I think ballpark, we have around $20 million in the bank. So we're not even close to that.
Plus the state money.
Right, but that state money has to be applied for at least a year in advance.
Yeah.
So that state money that we had is long gone. So we would have to reapply for those funds all over again. That was the proactive approach. We've shifted now to a reactive approach where we're seeking the permits for a similar beach restoration project with the intent of putting those on the shelf. So that would give the county, property owners, all of us flexibility in our beach management decision in the future, to where if we wanted to go a federal route, if we wanted to go a state-sponsored route, or if we wanted to go a locally sponsored route, we would have that option should a hurricane come. We do not have those permits in hand, and it's going to be probably 6 to 8 months before we get those permits, maybe the end of the year. It's going to take some time. But there's also this beach workshop we were talking about, is working with the local property owners on what other alternatives they would like to see. With the beach permit, this all-encompassing permit, we could do a smaller scale beach restoration project. We could do a dune restoration project. We could do a full-blown beach restoration project, county line to county line. That's what the intent is, the full-blown scale, and then we can always scale it back. But being able to look into the future in the crystal ball and see, well, this will be good for a tropical storm, and this will be good for a Cat 4, devastating impact. We just don't know. So all we can do is be prepared, have the permits, and be ready to go. But without the property owner's support, there's not much we can do. The county's not going to go and willfully force beach restoration on the private property owners. So that's where we are today. We're in a bit of a limbo phase, but we have done our best to try and prepare the county and the property owners. So,
I'd just add to what you said, kind of in a footnote, sort of parenthetical way, that the property owner's problem was the 50-year Corps of Engineers easement, not the beach restoration.
I understand, and there's a lot of things. There's the erosion control line.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
There's the sand quality, as Lisa had mentioned. There's the 50-year easement, and And we've really done our best to try and address each one of those, but I understand I mean, I'm not a property owner in Walton County on the beach, but I do understand those concerns. And all we're trying to do is educate and have folks prepared. And that's a task of the committee too. If there's something that I should be doing, if there's something the county or Brian myself should be doing, please let us know. That was our intent with the public workshop, and I know we've kind of pushed it off a little bit. We have some new county commissioners. We want to make sure they're fully educated and involved. But that's been the direction, is let's have a workshop. Let's talk to the folks. Let's hear what they want. And, you know, Lisa, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from the property owners that I've spoken with, that's been the approach that they've preferred. Let's just be prepared, and we'll be prepared to address it in the future.
And be very transparent.
Yes.
And I think you're doing a great job of that, Matt. And I want to say one other quick thing that's also a kudo. I don't know if any of you saw Inlet Beach, either in pictures or in, person, but Inlet Beach got shredded from tire tracks with the vendors putting their boxes back and everything. And I just want to also commend Josh, you're just getting the kudos today, but they went in there and they cleaned it up about as best as you could humanly do. And incorporated in this kudo is a suggestion that the next time, and there will be a next time because they'll go collect the boxes at the end of the season, I guess, and then they'll put them back again, is perhaps you all could look at establishing a corridor or something, as opposed to allowing them to drive literally the entire width, depth, whatever of the beach, where you don't, I think they should clean it up personally, like have maybe your vendor association fund a raking, smoothing of the beach after that stuff. But I do think if maybe you could confine them to a coming and going lane or something where you don't literally have to do 100 or more depth of beach to clean up if you do it. But you guys did a great job. Even the homeowners down there that were upset posted again, showing what a good job you did. I thought that was terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. We're looking at some different options on, that, like you say, got a little out of hand down there. And so we're looking at some different things of how to administrate that privilege.
Yeah.
You got stock in the wheel rakes now?
You got what?
Stock in the wheel rakes? We're putting on the TDC trucks?
I know we did invent them.
Yeah.
We did have a employee that invented one.
Yeah, I know.
They help.
Brian's got stock in it, I guess.
Yeah.
Sell them all the beach vendors.
I know.
Put that in the ordinance, the resolution.
I mean, is they do fit on a receiver hitch, so who knows? Maybe we can encourage vendors when they're putting their boxes out to drag a rake. Come get one at the TDC.
That's right.
I'll give you first opportunity when we go public.
I know part of the problem with that inlet is that there's only that one emergency vehicle access for almost 8 miles to the lakeward access. So that's the only ingress, egress.
Yeah.
That
And that's
really
another
is our
issue
problem, is because of the coast of Lake Outfalls and the location of our drive-on beach access points, it does mean a lot of traversing back and forth. So I know that you're all privy to the knowledge that we are looking at buying property, and that's one of our key points when we're considering it is, will it provide us another access point onto the beach? If you think about it, if our trucks had entered the beach on one end and drive off on the other end, we wouldn't be doing this.
True.
And we could eliminate a lot of that. But until we figure out a better way to get trash off the beach and enforce the codes, there's going to be some truck driving.
Any more comments from the council?
Brian, could we start back over and go through the rest of this one more time? You guys okay with that?
Rush Limbaugh's about to come
That's
on.
my, do we
How
have
about
any
the
other?
public? Any more comments from the public?
I had a quick question, Mr. Brenner. Are you guys going to be doing the Pilcher Park? Is that be under TDC?
It will be. We'll be maintaining Pilcher Park, and we had a meeting with all concerned county departments of how we're all going to interact down there and what differences that public park would have in relation to vending versus our other regional beach accesses. So,
What was that?
It hasn't been defined yet. You know, right now it'll be done just like we do regional beach access. You know, it's public vending. You know, of course, you know, there's different things. We don't have beach chairs.
Right, there's nothing that should be left there.
What about Legion
There
Park?
shouldn't be anything left there per se. You know, a chair or an umbrella is
Yeah,
staked
no,
out
no,
on
no.
it.
I think what we'll see there is people using it for day charter fishing,
Right.
probably paddleboard and kayaks and all that. So there was just a very brief discussion on, let's all be thinking about what we want to do there. You know, once again, the concessions agreement topic came up, and we were asked to explore that along with what we're doing at the regional beach access. So,
And when is that supposed to tentatively open?
the park, the last I heard was March 17th, is that right, Josh? I think March 17th.
Oh, that
So,
soon?
Yeah, and it's gonna be, I guess what they call a soft opening. I think the ribbon cutting will be at a later date.
Got it.
Now, that's subject to change. I did notice that Skanska's pulling their trailers out.
I saw that too.
And what I've seen from on top of the bridge looking down, looks like that most of the park is complete. There's still some areas that need to be landscaped and or, I think all the paving is complete. And then, you know, we have some excess funds from that half-cent sales tax that have to be expended on the bridge project. So we're also exploring ways to put that money to good use. So
Cool.
that's what we're at.
Cool. Thank
Does
you.
the TDC maintain Legion Park?
We used to. The Bayside parks had gone in and out of our control over the last couple of years. It's my understanding that we're now going to be told, or we will be told or notified shortly, that all the Bayside parks, all the South Side parks are under our control. The reason they floated in and out is because different issues at different parks got different responses from the commissioners that are in charge of that district. As you know, Legion is actually in District 4. Is that right, John? Commander? Somewhere, you know, there that drops down. And so there was, you know, at Cessna and at Legion, there is some nightly bad behavior. Depends on what time of year it is. And so they were asked to, we were asked to do a few things, and then it was decided that Parks and Recreation would do it. But
Legion's in pretty bad shape.
I'll go take a look at it today, and I'll contact the powers that be and find out where we are with if I'm supposed to be taking care of it or if Park and Recreation is supposed to be taking care of it.
Should we put a,
Do what?
Parks and Rec is taking care of that part.
Okay.
These parks don't close at night at any time?
there's no gate.
Well, that was part of the problem is some people want them closed at night, but the you know, a lot of the locals use those for
Flounder gigging?
Flounder, yeah.
well, no, they use them for, you know, fishing, you know, mullet fishing, other activities, you know, duck hunting and all that, depending on what time of year it is. And so, but the simple problem is if you close them at night, what time do you close them, you
Right.
know, during the summer? Because it doesn't get dark until 7:30.
Well, and like, I mean, people want to go flounder gigging too. I mean, that's
That's what I'm saying, you know,
nice.
so, you know, personally, I believe the parks ought to be open just like our regional beach accesses are open 24 hours. The other thing is, we found that if you leave them open, you tend to have less vandalism, to be honest with you.
Because the people are using them.
Well, because they
Other
can,
people,
because they
good
can.
people are
use
going
them.
to.
yeah.
Because what we find out is that when the doors are locked, they kick the doors in, or they kick those louvers in on the side of the buildings, because they want to get to use the restroom, or they get mad because it's not open, for whatever reason.
Right.
But then the other problem is, if you leave them open at night, then people congregate and drink and get loud, and the all these parks, you know, are in neighborhoods, and the adjacent neighbors complain.
I'm sure there's, you know, loitering
Alabama thing.
prohibitions and stuff.
One of the things we're looking at is cameras.
Yeah. Just have the deputies Right by there.
Hey, well, the sheriff has limited resources
They do.
for that
Oh, I
kind of
know.
stuff, but, you know, we have cameras at Cessna, and that has stopped some of that bad behavior. What we'd like to do is cameras that, you know, are on the county network, so they can then be piped into the sheriff's communications office, and they can be monitored on a real-time basis.
Yeah.
Right now, we have, you know, an 8-day loop, and if something bad happens, we go, you know, watch hours of video and determine whether he's a bad person. But the problem with the countywide network is the connectivity that we don't have in Walton County with broadband services. So we're getting there, but in order to get things and to carry that high quality of video is a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure that has to be put in. So
It's hard, you have to clean the cameras a lot and all kinds of, you know, because of the salt spray. I mean, there's a lot of issues with beach cameras. Yeah, I know, because I have them.
Yeah, a maintenance issue for sure.
Yeah, you just have to keep up with it, or they end up not much good to you if you can't see what's actually taking place,
Right.
so, you know.
But, so anyway, the answer to the question is hopefully we'll have all the Bayside parks and, we'll, take care of them appropriately. And, we also have some ideas of making a canoe kayak trail along the south side of the bay. We're putting in a new canoe kayak launch over on East Mitchell. That's one of our nerd projects. It's going to start here.
The Legion's got a boat ramp there, but you really can't use it because there's no dock to tie your boat up
Well,
to.
that, and it's, you know, it's only a foot deep. You know,
It's shallow, but I mean, flounder gigging, you could use it there. I've never used it myself, but
I launched my boat there at a high tide one day whenever Destin came back and literally
couldn't get out.
Couldn't get back on the trailer. I mean, I couldn't
Yeah.
back my truck far enough out into the bay to get the trailer underwater. Anyway,
All right, anything else?
Motion.
motion to
All
adjourn.
right, let's adjourn.